gonna cough in it. Alright, you can take his. Does it work? Does that one work? Yeah, hardly. Here. I don't think I can hear it. No, it's not working. Okay.
Good work, sir.
You have everything you need?
So I have to share with you whether I like it or not.
Yeah. Right.
Sign in.
All right, we'll go ahead and call to order Planning Commission meeting Monday, May 8th, 2017. We'll go ahead and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Jason Lawson,
Present.
Dennis Anderson,
Present.
Josh Westridge, Brian Sheward, Sarah Ford,
Present.
Craig Arthur,
Present.
Corey Glassman.
All right.
Great.
Pardon me. All right, we'll go ahead and start with the approval of the agenda for the March 13th, 2017 meeting minutes. I'll hear a motion.
I make a motion we approve the meeting minutes from March 13th, 2017.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, meeting minutes are approved. Looks like we do have some public requests to speak on these forums. Are there any public requests to speak for any items outside of the agenda? Yes, sir. Go ahead.
It's Mike.
My name is Mike Farrell. I live in Whitestown at 7267 East 300 South. I have maybe just procedural questions. I don't know what other forum to ask them other than here. I've been looking at the UDO, and I found a couple typographical, what I believe are typographical errors. I've given the information to Lauren. Lauren is going to dig into that into more detail, and I think she'll probably be doing her diligence on that. But there's two questions I have that drastically affect me in my effort for the next 30, 60 days. And one, I'm hoping to get a confirmation that the UDO, as it was passed, was intended to be only a compilation of the presently existing ordinances and not introduce any amendments to those. That's a simple yes, no, but that's question one. I'll go on to question two, then maybe I can get a response, hopefully. If it turns out that that it's confirmed that they are typographical errors, what would be the procedure to correct them? Is it considered a change where we have to go through the two meetings in public comment, or is it simple as something that's changed as it's not really a change? I like to use corrected change. That's the question. And the issue is there was a buffer yard that was introduced with the UDO that was, I don't believe was in the previous ordinances. That's the bulk of it.
I believe it, Lauren, that would go through you and then it would come to us? Or how would that, do you know?
Yeah, so any amendments that we would work together as far as any amendments that we would want to do, and then it would obviously come to you guys for approval. But as far as the first question that you had was when the UDO was created, correct?
Yes.
Whether or not it was a combination of the subdivision control ordinance and the zoning ordinance, which was the intent. If there was any amendments added to that at that time, correct?
Thank
Okay.
you for that clarification, yes.
John, do you want to speak on that?
Well, let me say this. The staff and I are well aware that there were a number of typographical errors in the UDO, and unfortunately, many of those still occur in the version of it that you can find online at the town's website. The staff is in the process of correcting all those, and I think is well along and probably within a day or a few days or a couple of weeks of getting all of those corrected and posting an updated corrected version. Also, there have been some amendments made to the UDO since it was enacted.
Okay.
So
So the corrected version, that will be corrections made and probably put back online without necessarily amendments or public discussion.
That would not require any amendments because those amendments have already been approved.
Makes sense?
Now, I know that when the UDO was first passed, it was intended to be for, 99% just a carryover of what previously existed. Now, there were some clarifications that had to be made as part of that process. If you've got particular concerns about provisions in there, certainly the staff or I would be happy to.
Well, that's the information I've shared with Lauren, and I guess I don't want to keep her from doing her diligence. I
Yeah.
just I got what I'm looking for, so you've answered my question.
Okay.
Now I'll wait for the corrected version, which I assume will go back online as it's corrected.
Yes, yeah, we'll post it online. But knowing your major question, it's regarding a buffer yard specifically adjacent to his property. There's one buffer type that just showed up in the UDO, and so we don't necessarily know if it was a combination of the subdivision control ordinance or the actual zoning ordinance, the combination of the two, and if there's a conflict, and that's the reason why this buffer type was created. I think there's just a little bit more history and more research that needs to be done.
Okay. Is that something that would need a committee, or should we hold off on that till?
I think
we
it's
find-
something that we can do internally since we're updating the UDO.
Okay.
But if there are major amendments, then I think maybe the review committee could look at something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Sir and members of the commission, if it's just a question of interpretation, the director has the authority to make that interpretation, and then if there's any concern about that interpretation, that can be appealed to the Board of Zoning Appeals. I'm not suggesting you would need to do that, but there is a process for getting questions of that nature resolved.
Well, thank you for hearing my question.
Okay.
I'm satisfied with the answers, and we'll do our process. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, any other public requests to speak that's in regards to, that's not related to the agenda items? All right, moving on.
Yeah, I think we're having a sound issue, so if you do come up to the microphone, just try to project a little bit more, and we're gonna try to get an alternative microphone up there too. Sorry about that.
All right.
Is it fixed?
And do we have any presentations for today? Doesn't look like it, Lauren.
I think that one works. We'll just speak up.
Thanks, Lauren.
Sorry, I can't fix it right now.
So no public requests to speak, or I'm sorry, no presentations for today, I'm guessing?
No.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. All right, moving on to item 5, unfinished business, docket PC 1712, TA Anson Pud text amendment for the loading berth and trailer staging. Lauren?
Yes, so originally this was sent to, you guys saw it last month, and then this was sent to review committee, and the review committee saw it on April 25th. We had an hour and a half to discuss this, and really the consensus out of the review committee was to give a favorable recommendation back to you guys, which eventually would go to council regardless. So as part of the staff recommendation in the staff report, it says the Whitestown Review Committee has met and gives a favorable recommendation to approve this text amendment as presented to the Plan Commission. No amendments were made in the review committee. Staff recommends that the Plan Commission give a favorable recommendation to adopt the presented text amendments to Section 3.2 and Section 11.8.c 14 of the I-65 PUD.
Thank you, Lauren. So I know we have quite a few public requests to speak in regards to this item. I'd like to make a note that please just try to keep it to business that hasn't been talked about in regards to the agenda item. If you've already spoken in regards to it, if you have something new, that's fine. But if you've already spoken in regards to it, either favorably or unfavorably, please just keep it to new business only. So on that note, I'll go ahead and there's quite a few on this one sheet, so we'll go ahead. Mark Hosfeld. Hello, sir.
Hello, Mr. President. I'll speak at an elevated level. When I filled that sheet out, there was unfortunately only one.
Sure.
That got rectified, and so I'm supposed to be the first speaker.
Okay. All right. Go ahead, Mr. Tui.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the Planning Commission, Mr. President. My name is Brian Tui. My office address is 50 South Meridian. I represent Brownie Duke LLC in case number PC 17-012-TA. Thank you for hearing our case this evening. As a matter of, so for the record, as you noted, this case has been presented in some form or fashion for public hearings of one sort or another, so I will keep it brief. I would first address the board and let you know, to make this absolutely certain, there's a letter that was dated April 21st, which I believe is in front of you, and that letter was to make it absolutely clear that the purpose of this text amendment is desired only to affect the Interstate Commerce District and the Commerce District. Both of those districts are owned, more than 50% of each of those districts are owned by the petitioner, so I wanted to clarify that. There was a question raised at the last hearing. We have a PowerPoint which we're working diligently on. It may be afflicted in the same way the microphones are afflicted. But that first slide of that PowerPoint is our letter, which is in front of you. I've highlighted a portion of that letter to confirm to this board that the petition before you tonight only affects the Interstate Commerce District and the Commerce District, and that this letter confirms in writing that the petitioner does own 50%, at least 50% of the what we call the affected area of those two districts, and to the extent our petition should be amended to assure this commission that the two text amendments only apply to those two districts, that letter confirms that. To remind the commission where those two districts are, this slide shows that they are the area of the purple Commerce District and the Interstate Commerce District. Both of them are at the north end of Anson. Those are the two districts for which we seek the text amendments that are outlined and have been outlined before you. The two text amendments, members of the Planning Commission, I'm glad to read them if necessary. I sense it probably is not. Relate to section 3.2, where we have asked this commission to favorably recommend that the definition of loading berths within Anson essentially include the openings in the facades on the buildings that are used for the receipt or delivery of merchandise or materials to and from the building, and that they do not include areas of the development that extend beyond the facade of the building. The second proposed text amendment relates to trailer staging, and that is that we proposed a change to that text amendment that's outlined in blue. Trailer staging will continue to be prohibited 200 feet within 200 feet of a protected residential area, and will have to be located on the opposite facade of the building if the building is within 600 feet. Again, this is to confirm and clarify what has been understood by the petitioner since the adoption of the Anson PUD in relation to the location of loading berths and location of trailer staging areas with regards to near protected residential areas. The next slide, please, is we met with the Whitestown Review Committee in April. We had, as Ms. Bailey said, a lengthy discussion about these two text amendments, proposed text amendments. Both petitioners and remonstrators were well represented in that meeting, and the review committee made, I believe, a unanimous recommendation for approval of these two text amendments. The purpose of these amendments in some members of the commission is to clear up any confusion as to where loading berths and trailer staging may be located in those two districts, the Commerce District and the Interstate Commerce District. And we're respectfully requesting the approval of these two text amendments to make it crystal clear where those loading berths are and where the trailer staging, where the loading berths and trailer staging may be located, again, with respect to a protected residential district. We believe that if the Planning Commission would see fit to recommend approval of these, that would clear up any confusion. It will likely end litigation that's related to this matter. We believe that the Review Committee's recommendation for approval is consistent with the town's Board of Zoning Appeals decision in a related case where they upheld a letter of determination issued by Ms. Bailey as to where loading berths may be located and where trailer staging may be located. And I believe that the staff report that is before you tonight also recommends a favorable recommendation. That is, the staff report makes the recommendation to make a favorable recommendation to the town council. In some members of the Planning Commission, since 2014, when one Building 8A was approved through a couple of TAC committee meetings, now multiple Planning Commission meetings, two different planning directors' reviews, a Board of Zoning Appeals public hearing, and then the Review Committee's meetings, so a number of public hearings. The petitioner and their...
Mr. Turi, I hate to interrupt, but wanted to keep it to just what we haven't already discussed and the timeline of that. And I want to give time for everyone else to speak in regards to this agenda item. So did you have anything new that you wanted to present? I didn't want to interrupt your closing.
That's great. I'll wrap it up. I would just merely suggest that adopting these two text amendments is completely consistent with the findings of fact made by the Board of Zoning Appeals, and we would respectfully ask for your recommendation of approval. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Terry. All right, and Mr. and Mrs. Drake. Good evening.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Carol Sparks Drake, and I'm here this evening with my husband, Tom. We live at 4995 East, 450 South. And I'd like to first address what I just heard as petitioner's amendment or attempted amendment of the affected area, which is the subject of the requested PUD amendment. What was noticed in the newspaper and what petitioner properly identified was an area of approximately 1,709 acres. What was noticed to the property owners was for 1,709 acres. It has never been noticed that the affected area is only the industrial area up at the north end of Anson. This is the Anson PUD. It's the PUD for all 1,709 acres. And accordingly, the legal notice says they are requesting that this be retroactively applicable to all existing buildings and applicable to all future buildings. So we continue to believe that petitioner has not yet met the threshold requirements of coming before you to request a zoning amendment, and that petitioner's attempt to redefine something contrary to what they put in the paper is another end run about an affidavit last month that they gave that they owned all 1,709 acres, which was incorrect. We are here tonight asking you again to hold Browning Duke accountable to what they agreed. There is a definition for loading berths that's applicable throughout Whitestown. It's applicable throughout Boone County, throughout Indiana, and actually pretty consistent throughout the United States. And it is not the hole in the wall. We seem to be going to great lengths to undo where Building 8A was constructed. And Commissioner Ford asked me a very direct question at the Plan Commission meeting, or the PUD committee meeting, which quite frankly took me by surprise. What is our end game for continuing to come before you? We have no end game except as your neighbor, your fellow resident, we're looking to you to enforce the Whitestown zoning ordinances and to not countenance going around them. Holding the status quo is not an end game for us. It's something we believe is good planning, good zoning. I brought in the book from the American Planners Association. This definition is not new for loading bursts. This is a commonly accepted definition. I haven't found one place in the United States where loading bursts are the opening in the wall. And so while we have no end game, I believe our neighbors do have an end game, and it's to get around the zoning ordinance for their own objectives as opposed to good planning and zoning. So I know the four of you comprise the PUD committee, but I think it's important that you give your neighbors a fair shake and that you put yourself in our shoes if you live next door and the ordinance says what a loading berth is. We're not asking you to change that. We're just asking you keep the status quo then, so that loading berths in our neighborhood are the same as loading berths in your neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Drake. Alrighty, looks like we have Blaine Paul. Do you have anything? Okay. Okay, great. Thank you, sir. And let's see. I think that's. Did we have any other requests to speak?
Not that I have, no.
Okay. Did we have any questions from the Planning Commission? I know there's been a lot of discussion based around, and it was very engaging dialogue. I want to mention that there was a lot of good comments about what is a loading berth and what is a loading area and what is a loading dock, and I think that from that review committee, it came a favorable recommendation, as you stated, Lauren. So on that, I'll hear a motion for agenda item A.
Mr. President, I make a motion to approve docket PC-17-012-TA Anson PUD text amendment.
Okay. I'll go ahead and second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? And docket PC 1712 TA Anson PUD text amendment passes. Moving on to new business. Looks like agenda items A has already been tabled. Agenda item B, docket PC 1714 Realty Link concept plan. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Good evening, Plan Commission. Thank you for hearing our petition this evening. My name is Sean Downey, civil engineer with HWC Engineering, 135 North Pennsylvania Street, Suite 2800, Indianapolis, Indiana 46204. Also with me here this evening is Colby Price, Jeff Poole, and Andy Detro with Realty Link, the petitioners for the project you see before you. Tonight we come before you petitioning the approval of the concept plan and primary plat for the project known as the Shops at Whitestown. I've got a short presentation, kind of walk you through key points of the project. Project's proposed of approximately 33 acres, bordered to the south by New Prairie Worth, to the north by Central Boulevard, and to the east, Main Street. Currently, the project is proposing 12 lots, 7 of which are outlots. The main portion of the project will consist of 2 large retail buildings, 164,000 square feet, 103,000 square feet approximately. The project will also include a large parking area as well as 4 access points from Perry Worth and Mills Drive. The main access point for the project will be centrally located and will be served from a new roundabout that will be proposed at the intersection of Perry Worth Road and Mills Drive. Currently, the developer has accommodated community feedback as well as recommendation from the staff as recent as last week on the elimination or prohibiting vehicle traffic from Central Boulevard. Our original concept had shown a center boulevard between the 2 buildings. We're working with staff and we plan to eliminate that central access point. Here is the previously proposed concept plan. As I noted, the Central Boulevard that you see in the center of the site, currently we are working that will not make a connection north to Central Boulevard. The next few slides give a visual kind of concept of what the facility will look like. This is a view basically from the roundabout looking north. You've got some conceptual outlot buildings, and then you've got the 2 main buildings in the rear. And as I noted, that boulevard that you see between the 2 buildings actually will not make that connection. These 2 slides indicate a small pocket park area between the 2 buildings. This was a point of emphasis in working with the staff in providing more of a communal area, centralized, park area for the site. This view is from Central Boulevard looking toward the rear of the 2 large buildings. As you can see, the 1 car accessing out to Central Boulevard, that actually will not be the connection as I noted. This is a conceptual rendering of the building as far as the architectural aesthetics of the building, both from the front, rear, and side. These standards meet the current Anson PUD architectural guidelines. In closing, the developer's inclusion of the small pocket area as well as some connectivity with winding sidewalks through the Central Boulevard area, providing more walkability, shows the developer's willingness and their positive response to staff recommendations as well as community comments. The proposed plan is compliant with the Anson I-65 PUD as well as the town's municipal code and requirements. The development team will continue to work with staff through the secondary plat and detailed development process. as feedback from both staff and the community filter in. I believe one of the representatives from Realty Link would like to make a statement as well.
Okay. And if you could state your name and who you affiliate with.
I will.
Thank you.
First of all, thank you for hearing both Sean and I. I'm Colby Price with Realty Link. I'll be the project manager controlling this project from this moment forward. And as I get up to speed on some things, I just wanted to make a couple statements to Sean's point. We are trying to work with staff to address some concerns that came about as early as at May 3rd. And we've seen the staff's report, and I just want to request that you would adopt an approval of this conceptual site plan, noting any maybe contingencies to that approval, noting that we haven't been able to address all the comments that came out of the May 3rd meeting. I believe there was a recommendation to table the meeting, and I just, as I'm getting up to speed, would like to understand, should that occur, the grounds, I guess, of that tabling, because as Sean indicated, we do meet, my understanding at least, of that ordinance that is the PUD, and again, would just like to get a better understanding of that. Should it need to be tabled, what we need to do that we're not addressing the PUD in, so I can direct Sean and my team as we move forward. So,
Thank you, Mr. Price.
thank you.
All right, we'll go ahead and move to the staff report.
Did you want to see the concept and the primary at the same time? Because the recommendation is the same regardless.
Yeah, let's go. Yeah, that'd be.
Just wrap them together?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Staff recommends that the Plan Commission take in consideration of the public concerns and tables, both the primary and the concept plan, to address Mr. Price's comments or request to not table it and have some contingencies on it. I was there at the public meeting, and I have not received a revised plan yet. So I didn't want you guys to approve something, especially with not having a full board with a project this large, probably one of the largest retail projects that you guys have seen thus far. It's going to be a huge impact on our community, and I think we need to approve it and get it right before we start doing official approvals. So I know that they're sending out revised plans to me, but I'd like to see those, and I think maybe we can work together as far as hearing additional public input, and maybe we could get a final vote for June instead.
Thank you, Lauren.
Yeah.
All right, we'll go ahead. I know we have some, I believe we have a public request to speak. Actually, we didn't get any official public requests to speak. Are there any additional feedback from the public, either in favor or, okay, have you filled out the public? Okay, go ahead and you can bring those up to me, and we'll go ahead and.
To him.
How many are there? Because I want to make sure that we stick to the time on this. If there's 20 people, I want to make sure we give everyone time. So looks like we only have 2. Absolutely. All right, go ahead, sir. And if you could state your name and your address of residence.
Sure. My name is Troy Birch. I live at 6207 Bliss Point East in the neighborhood of Anson, right behind this development. And I apologize, I wasn't here to make the May 3rd meeting, so I didn't see the changes. So some of the comments that I had possibly been taken care of now. I guess I want to start by saying I'm not opposed to this project. I am opposed to it as it was presented, because I don't feel like it's in compliance with the feel of the Anson project as a whole. I chose Anson to build my new house a year ago because of the neighborhood feel, the walkability, and it was something different than every other neighborhood. And I think anybody that's driven through the neighborhood of Anson part, which is the front section, not the back section, can see that it's different. It's got a neighborhood feel. Every night, people are out walking their dogs, playing at the park. It's different. That's why we live there. I feel like the proposal that was presented completely turns its back on the neighborhoods of Anson, on the townhouse section, on the apartments, and the residential. I think particularly along Central Boulevard. It appears to me in looking at the original plans for the Anson PUD way back when, that Central Boulevard was meant to be almost residential or retail on both sides. I don't see any particular area where a loading dock of retail backs up to Central Boulevard. If you go to the Anson, Indiana website, which is Duke's website, and look at the interactive plan, it actually shows buffer buildings along Central Boulevard that buffers Central Boulevard from any loading docks of the retail. Of course, this area was always designated as retail. I'm not opposed to that. I think it's got to be done right. We've all waited for a long time for this development. We've looked at that empty ground for a long time. I beg you guys, let's get it right. I'm glad to hear that they're considering taking the connection point away, because I think that was my biggest issue, because that really was the connection that directly tied back into the retail section. And as I saw online, you're basically seeing the sides of big box retail. And my comment was going to be to request something similar to Traders Point, which I'm sure we've all been to Traders